So Tycoon has a lot of vehicles in the game. Some of them aim to be pretty realistic, while others not so much. Therefore in today's video guys, I will be going over some vehicles which are missing their features within the game, which they do actually have in real life. However, unfortunately they didn't get them in game. And this video will be pretty long, and I'll try to keep it as realistic as I possibly can. Alright, so jumping into the first vehicle, which I know a lot of you guys are complaining about, and I see this quite a lot in suggestions. However, the F-22 Raptor almost feels like it's robbed out of its stealth. Oh, my mistake for the skin, by the way. In real life, the F-22 is known for being one of the most stealthy vehicles in the world. However, in Tycoon, it literally just has furs. And I believe after they have just made this thing a lot worse, after the addition of a lot of just paid planes which are just better than the F-22 in general, it feels like this vehicle overall has lost its spice. And I feel like just giving back its stealth to this vehicle would definitely give it the spice that it needs to actually be as strong as what the F-22 is supposed to be. However, the one thing which I also question is, why does the F-22 have bombs, even though it's not the bomber variant? I do believe that it probably shouldn't be carrying them, and I believe instead it should probably be giving it some type of missiles. Now moving to the next vehicle, which is going to be the USS Zumwalt, and oh my god guys, I have so much to actually say about this thing. It does miss out a lot of features, and the first and foremost, it definitely deserves to have stealth. It is a feature which the Zumwalt in real life does actually have. It is by far the most stealthy ship in the world. However, they ended up not actually giving it the stealth on release, even though they released stealth as a feature in exactly the same update. However, with this, the Zumwalt does have a lot more problems, and one of them is going to be its cannons, since in real life they don't function as cannons that just fire forward. They can to an extent, however they mainly work as artillery in some kind of way, so they would almost be aiming like the TOS Buratino's artillery system. Now the next thing which I also question is that the Zumwalt does not have any type of chaff, which is kind of weird. I would understand if it did have stealth and that's why they wouldn't give it chaff as balancing. However, it doesn't have either of these features, which is just a little bit weird to me. Now some other things which players a lot of the time just point out is, why are we not able to land the helicopters on top of the Zumwalt? I think that would be a really cool feature to be able to just attach a helicopter to the Zumwalt, or maybe even a F-35B, which of course it does have VTOL, so maybe something like this could possibly work. And now the last thing which is a little bit interesting is the Zumwalt unfortunately could not really spawn any small ships down here. I think perhaps a jet ski would work best, since it can store jet skis in real life and it can store a variety of different vehicles at the bottom, but this is just a small pointer. That's not something that needs to be added, it's just something that's missing that the Zumwalt does have in real life. Now with this, I also see a lot of people mentioning it. However, a lot of ships in this game actually do not have their chaff system, which I believe they should have, just like they do in real life, but it's just like more of a small pointer. Now the next vehicle which we're gonna be moving into is of course going to be the EA-18 Growler, and I have a lot to say about this thing, and I know a lot of you guys would definitely want to hear this. But the EA-18 Growler in real life is supposed to essentially just be a team-based vehicle. It's supposed to carry maybe a few missiles, but it's mainly supposed to be a electronic warfare plane that supports its allies. However, in this game, what it does is it only supports itself. I believe a better way for electronic warfare for the EA-18 Growler to work is perhaps being able to jump the connection for maybe a radius of 1000 studs for certain vehicles. So for example, you would be able to pick which vehicle you want to disable in a way that stops its radar from essentially working and not being able to actually be able to lock onto other enemies, and this ability essentially just goes on cooldown. I think something like that would work a lot better than how the EA-18 Growler works right now. I really wish for this to be a faction-based vehicle, because the way it is right now is just really sad. Now moving into the next vehicle, which is also one which I see a lot of people talking about, is going to be the Boxer CRV. We have been waiting for, I believe, almost a year. That's how long it's been since I first brought it up. However, the Boxer CRV is missing its coaxial machine gun, even though it actually has it on the model, but it isn't able to use it in game. However, one more issue which I also see is the incorrect placement of APS. The way in which the Boxer CRV's APS works is that it isn't actually mounted on top. However, it's actually mounted from the sides and it shoots from the sides instead of the top itself. It's just like a small pointer in terms of realism, and it's something I also see a lot of people pointing out. Now moving to some helicopters, which I partially understand why they are this way, but we have the Invictus and the Raider X, which are unfortunately completely missing their stealth, which they do actually have in real life. Just have a look at how they are built. You know they're gonna be stealthy vehicles. They hold their weapons in the inside compartment. With this, they also have a very stealthy design. That is the whole point of these vehicles in some way. However, unfortunately, they don't have this feature, though I do understand why the RAS-66 has it instead. It kinda is supposed to be its own vehicle in a way that has this feature and nobody else does. So I do understand what they're doing here, except in real life, these would probably have stealth. And now quickly moving into the T-14 Armada, I've already talked about this previously. In real life, this thing has a coaxial machine gun on top of its explosive machine gun, and then with this, the BMPT Terminator is also missing its grenade launchers, which it does also have. I do understand why they don't want to give this thing more weaponry, since it's already overpowered enough. Like, in my opinion right now, the BMPT is by far the best tank in the game, so just giving it grenade launchers on top of having these missiles and an overpowered cannon, this thing would just destroy everything in close range, even faster than what everybody does. Now with this, the helicopters are also missing a very vital feature which only the A129 Mangusta has, and that's going to be its scope/zoom, which the Mangusta is able to have. However, no other helicopter in the game actually has this feature. I'm kind of confused why that's actually the case, why the Mangusta is special in this way, because I believe almost every helicopter in the game definitely deserves this feature. Now with this, the PLO-1 is still missing quite a lot of its features, which it does have in real life, partially being the grenade launcher, but also on top of it, of course, it's stealth. That is the main idea of the PLO-1. It is supposed to just be a stealthy tank from the future. However, unfortunately, it does not have that. Now, the next vehicle which is missing a very unfortunate feature is going to be the USS Independence, and this one makes me the most sad out of any of them, since USS Independence is by far my favorite ship in the world right now, and that of course is going to be its interior. Because this thing only has an interior on the top, however the whole bottom of the ship is basically useless and it does not have anything. However, in real life, what this part of the boat is used for is of course transportation, having medical facilities down here and all this stuff, which it really sucks that we are robbed from that on the USS Independence. Maybe they could add it at some point. It will be so cool to make this ship even cooler than it already is. Now with this, the Sigma class unfortunately doesn't have one important feature, and that's of course going to be its sonar, which it does actually have in real life. It really does make me sad, since this thing basically cannot do anything against submarines unless a submarine is like right next to it. And with this, of course, it's also armed with torpedoes. And the best part about this is that these torpedoes will be so useful for countering submarines. However, in reality, we can't really counter them since we cannot see them. Oh yeah, and one special request to you developers, I would love it if this actually worked. However, the lifeboats, they're just sitting here all sad, not in use. I wish that you could actually be able to use these lifeboats in some way. Oh man, maybe if this vehicle was perhaps destroyed, then you would be teleported in like a rib, perhaps that would maybe work. Something similar to the submarine system. I feel like it's something that would definitely work in this game quite well. Now with this, the chronoplane also is missing some important things, and rather it doesn't make that much sense to me. First of all, it doesn't have a zoom, which is honestly really unfortunate, since it's gonna be really difficult to actually shoot things from range, obviously. Now with this, this vehicle in real life actually uses anti-ship missiles and not guided missiles, but I do understand why they gave it the guided missiles instead, since it's like much better for the meta. However, the one last thing which really does hurt me a lot is the lack of interior for this vehicle. It just has a door which teleports you outside, but oh my god, just look how much space there is to create a beautiful interior for this vehicle. It would work out so well, and it will be the first ever proper plane with an interior in this game. It will be amazing, developers. Now with this, the RAS-66 Comanche is unfortunately also missing its radar, and the most interesting part about this is that in the promotional image, the RAS-66 literally has its radar, so it doesn't really make that much sense to me to why they didn't give it in game. Maybe they thought it was too overpowered, so they removed it before release. I don't really see that many reasons for it, to be honest. And now, unfortunately, moving into the laser-free APC, it does not have the smoke which it does in real life. I believe they haven't even modeled the smoke on this vehicle, so it kind of makes sense why it doesn't have it. But you know, most military vehicles in the world literally have smoke. However, one vehicle series which also bothers me quite a lot by not having smoke is going to be the Visual series. None of them actually have this, which, you know, it kind of sucks since it would make these things a lot more viable than what they already are. Like, they're not really useful at all, if I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys, maybe except for the Visual 1 Tal. Anyway guys, for the time being, that's basically all I have for you guys in today's video. If I did miss something out, then do let me know in the comment section down below. Maybe I could consider doing a part 2.